Welcome to Love, Dating, and Relationships for Spiritual Women. I'm your host, Julie Grimm, and I'm super excited today to have Jacquelynne Maloney with us. If this is your first time tuning in, you don't know me, quick introduction. I am a guide and healer in the Modern Mystery School, and I support people on walking their spiritual path. Today, I am so excited to have Jacquelynne Maloney. She is also a guide and healer within the Modern Mystery School, as well as a third step ritual master. And so I, of course, know Jack through this school that we both study at, this metaphysical training. But I really became aware of Jack when she started to put out these 9-star key forecasts. And that was something that I had never heard of before. I knew about Chinese zodiac, and I knew obviously about astrology and all those different other ways that we can look at ourselves, we can better understand ourselves. But then she introduced this totally new concept to me, which was the 9-star key. And I was so excited about it. I think it's going to be really interesting looking at how we express ourselves and then how that can affect our relationships. So thank you so much for joining us, Jacquelynne.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And this is literally my favorite topic. So, and especially when it comes to relationships. I can't tell you, like before we get started, I can't tell you how many people over the past, 5-6 years just message me like, hey, I have a birth date. Will you look this guy up for me? Or,
so I mean, how many of us really, come on, how many of us do that? Oh, what day are you born in time? And, and start digging like, okay, where's the compatibility here?
Right. And like, it's the compatibility thing it's a completely different story with 9-star key, because when all the elements are in balance, so this has to do with the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. It's fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And it's a generating cycle on how everything goes. And, when the elements are imbalanced, everybody gets along. So it's not really about like how compatible you are and, oh, that's never going to work. It's more like, what kind of person are you dealing with? Do you truly enjoy their energy? And are they willing to do any growth work going forward to make it a better fit?
But that's a really great reframe. It's like nothing's really a deal breaker. It's just showing you how do you normally relate to people? How do they normally relate to people?
Exactly. And like there's certain hardwired things in their personality that are probably never going to change. So it's like, do you want that? Is that something that you want? But before we get too ahead of ourselves, so the basics of the 9-star key, it's something that I learned starting about 8 years ago. And it's like the esoterics of Chinese medicine. It goes way back. It's 5,000 years old.
I was going to say, I remember that from acupuncture, right? That there's the feeding cycle. Okay. So it's related.
It's totally related. And it's really interesting because when I started my work with the Modern Mystery School, I was like, just to show how opposite my life was, I was in construction insurance. I sold construction insurance and was in like a male-dominated industry and very mental. And I started doing my work within the
very
school.
mental.
Just
mental.
Like,
okay. Like just checking.
Yeah, very mental. And I started doing work within the school, and I realized that like I had been living from the neck up and I had like no concept of like what life was really like. And I started doing all this digging, and I think it was within 6 months of finding the school, I had completely picked up my life, quit my job, and I went down to study Chinese medicine. I literally went to acupuncture school. Didn't finish. I was there for about 8 years.
It is hard. I have a few, my cousins, an acupuncturist, I have a friend. It is not an easy training by any means. I mean, they basically have to study anatomy and physiology.
Which I love. I love that stuff. And I absolutely loved the curriculum. I loved everything about it. I thought Chinese medicine was fascinating. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be an acupuncturist. So it was a really expensive hobby. So at the same time.
And long. It's like 4 years or something. And talk about mental. I mean, obviously they're working on the body, so maybe there's more connection, but just studying that many hours in a day, it's a hugely mental undertaking.
It's exhausting. But at the same time, so I went down and I was studying in school, but in tandem, I was learning this 9-star key from my trainer. My teacher is in St. Catherine, Ontario, and she's phenomenal. And she works with one of the, her teacher is like the biggest teacher in the West that does this work. So I was learning like the nitty gritty and like all the points and the theory and all the stuff that they teach you in acupuncture school. And then at the same time was learning all this esoteric characteristics, tendencies. So it was a really beautiful flow and the way that things went together. So I like soaked it in. I absorbed it so incredibly quickly. And I was fascinated with it. Like I loved the studying aspect of it. So I love mental stuff. That's just kind of how I am. I'm a fire person. Fire people love to learn new things. So I learned this, and it just made so much sense to me. Like I'd always been somewhat interested in astrology. I'm more of a personality typing person. Like Myers-Briggs personality typing I thought was fascinating. I've done a lot of work with the Enneagram. I studied that pretty intensively for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. But when I found this system, you don't need to take a test. You don't need to take a test to figure out what you are. And it's just, there's only 5 elements really, and then the masculine and feminine versions of them. So it just made a lot more sense to me. It landed a lot better. And
I like that nuance about you didn't have to take a test, because sometimes I love to take those tests, and I've done Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, but I've always thought when I'm taking the test, this is what I think about myself.
in
And
that moment,
having studied now in the Modern Mystery School, I'm like, my blind spots, baby, like I got them. So I think this is how I'm being, but it might actually be a total distortion, like my understanding of how, oh, I'm always so kind and conscientious, like, or it might even be aspirational, oh,
right,
that's how I desire to be, but is that really how I'm being? And so
right.
then I get like, the last time I took one of those tests, I was like, it was so meta. I'm like, what's true? I'm not sure. So
Exactly. So like this is the part where I love this, because there's only really, so the 9-star key, I'll back up and just give a little bit of background. So it's called the 9-star key because it's literally 9-star energy. Key means energy. So it's the 9 stars of Polaris and Vega and the Big Dipper. And like
okay, what?
Yeah. And how that constellation is arranged when you come into the world. So in Chinese medicine, they used to look at the Big Dipper, and depending on which way it was oriented in the sky, they knew it was harvest time, or they knew it was like, any of the other seasons. That was like their clock.
I had no idea.
Isn't that cool?
That is so cool.
Yeah. So it's literally like how the stars were aligned when you came in to this world. And those 9 stars correlate with fire, water, and then yin metal, yin wood, yang wood, and then yin and yang earth and regular earth. So it's just those 9 expressions. So we all have 9, there's like 9 primary personalities.
Like the building blocks.
Yes. And if you
so do you think that fire and water, do they feel better about themselves because there's no yin and yang? Are they kind of like, I'm the essential one?
Yes and no. I mean, so there are yin and yang expressions of both fire and water. It's not, they don't have like their own thing, but they definitely do have yin and yang expressions. And that's just a nuance that I try not to get into, because it's, it's just, I think I'll do videos on those. That has actually been a request on my YouTube channel. So I'll probably do that at some point. But
it's more advanced. That's a more advanced understanding.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a little more nuanced. It's not even, I wouldn't even say advanced, but so yeah, we all have these, like, if you think of it as like an operating system, we all like, everybody thinks, this is why I love this work so much. Everybody thinks that everybody else thinks like them. And when you truly understand human dynamics, and especially with this system, it makes it really easy to see like, oh, we are completely different. No wonder why we're not understanding. Like even little things like loading the dishwasher can be like, no wonder, because of who they are. So the elements, even though everybody like gets along when they're balanced, there's like a controlling cycle and a generating cycle. So there's some elements naturally feel better because water feeds wood. We water plants, and wood returns, like use wood to make fire. And then fire returns to the earth, and earth generates metals and minerals and crystals. And then those crystals and minerals go back into the water supply. So like, excuse me, a wood person is going to feel really good around a water person because it's feeding them naturally.
I'm wood, so this is very helpful information for me.
Yes. Water people, they just feel nice, right? And and then conversely, we have, metal will cut wood, and wood will break up the earth, like the roots break up the earth, and earth muddies the waters, and fire melts metal. And so, like, certain people are just going to feel better when you're around them.
So
And
interesting.
and it doesn't have to be like, you know, like with metal cutting wood, you can either have like hedge clippers and cutting down the whole rose bush, or you can just be like pruning little things that don't work anymore. So it doesn't have to be like super severe. It depends on how in balance is that other person. Like, are they coming across abrasive, or is it like they come in and they refine you to exactly where you need to be, and then you're left better,
Well, and I know, again, from mystery school work, how important that pruning can be and how essential it can be for our own growth, even though you might sort of, especially in the beginning, kind of like wince or pull away from that, or maybe take it personally. Ultimately, you're like, oh, maybe it was something that I said that was off color, or, not really empowered, or whatever that might be. And then you reflect on it. It's like, oh, it was actually probably good that that person, whether it was a remark that felt snippy, or even their energy sometimes, if somebody feels cold and all you're doing is trying to exude warmth, and you're like, well, why don't they love me?
Yeah.
One day you're like, oh, it's okay. Actually it's okay.
Right, right. It's just, it's kind of like the natural balance of things. And we're not all supposed to be the same. We are different for a reason, and every element has its place. And we all have the five elements within us. Like, if we didn't, we wouldn't be alive. That's just kind of how it works. And it's, you might tend towards a couple different personalities, but everybody has them all there. And when they're all balanced, like, everything's good. So that's really what this comes down to, is like putting all the knowledge that I have with the 9-star key, and then using all the healing tools from the school, and helping people to present as the best possible version of themselves. That's what it comes down to.
So powerful.
Yeah. And so all these elements, like, everybody acts a little differently. So, like, some people are naturally optimistic, and some people just jump out of bed in the morning, and that's just how they are. And then if you have another person who literally hits snooze 5 times, and that's like their routine, and they like to stay up late and sleep in late, if either of those people try to live in the other person's shoes, they're going to be miserable. And like, this isn't about like one is better than the other. It's just they're different, and that's okay. It's like, this is who I am. I don't fit in the box. Like, water people, they generally love to stay up late, and they love to sleep in late, and they have a little bit different schedules than everybody else. They're definitely the more like, what's the word? Not unusual, but they tend to have like different schedules, and
Like eccentric, or
yeah, they tend to be like the artists, and they're super creatives, and you can't pin them down or put them in the box. They like to have flow and freedom. And so, like, waking up at 4 a.m. and going to CrossFit is not going to work for those people. But on the other hand, a wood person loves that stuff. There's always, there's two expressions of everything. So, like, the masculine wood loves, like, adrenaline junkie. I'm up, I'm doing the thing, I'm the entrepreneur, I'm getting, they're like, go, go, go. Like, the ultimate, like, if you think of like Wall Street broker, American, like, chiseled jaw type of guy, like, that's that energy. But like, the feminine wood doesn't do that. The feminine wood's a little more, they're softer in their approach. They like to work out, they like to get outside, but it's not about adrenaline. They like movement. And it's like, let's go for a nice hike, let's go for some nice gentle yoga, let's go move the body for the sake of fun. And I'll just give like a quick, sorry, I have
a quick overview. And also, for people who might be curious, I mean, you can go to your website because you have the list there, but it basically pertains to the year and month that you were born, correct?
Oh my God, yes, I didn't even say that. Yes, so it's, if you take your birthday, and you don't even need the whole birth date sometimes. If you were born after February 4th and onward, whatever year you were born, you're a particular element. The year runs from February 4th to February 3rd. So anybody that's born earlier in the year will have like the previous year's energy. But there is, so let me back up. So the primary personality is based on your year of birth. And then the date and month will tell you what there's like an inner child position. It's like how you react under stress, how you react in relationships, and how your family would describe you. And then there's like our end position, which is your challenges in the world, and then also how your work is, how you move around in the world, what your career is, and how you build that process. So even though everybody's like, we have one primary personality, and that's like the face that you show to everyone, there are nuances based on when you're born. So yeah, as long as you know your birth date and you can do some really simple math, you can figure this out. And there is a chart on my website that will show you exactly what year you were born. And it runs in 9-year cycles. So you can, once you can figure out yourself, you can figure out everybody else.
Well, that's the fun thing. So I figured out, I don't know if it's okay for me to divulge, but I'm a triple yin wood.
Yes, you are.
I am yin wood to the bone, which I guess is on some level a good thing, and potentially also means that I've got some hangups around that as well. But, what you were saying before about water feeding wood, it's like, okay, well, I know what year most water people were born in. So right. I start I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. They must be a water person. Mm-hmm. And begin to look a little bit differently at when I'm dating somebody or I'm interested in somebody, what that major theme might be for them and how they're going to not necessarily be negative or clash with me, but potentially like nourish me or I nourish them in the relationship.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's really helpful to have just to have that little bit of extra knowledge, like, oh, this is what your tendencies are. I can't tell you how helpful this has been. I've been using the system for 8 years now, and to, with my friends, with my family, with potential friends, with clients, I use it with all my clients, because if I know what someone's general elemental makeup is, I can pretty much tell what their general story is going to be, what they're experiencing. All Yinwood people struggle with making decisions under stress. Every single one.
We're too flexible.
Yes.
Too adaptable.
Yes. And too many options, which is it's like someone just please pick the restaurant.
Well, for me, it feels like I'm very tuned in. And this was another episode that we did was about dating as an empath. I'm very tuned in to how other people are feeling. And so tuned in that it's like, I might prioritize that above what I really want. Mm-hmm. Somebody once likened it to, you walk in a room and you feel like the temperature is too hot, but you just let it be whatever the temperature is. Cause it's like, oh, this must be what people like.
Right.
Versus saying, and sometimes we need to realize it's like, it's okay to say, this is too hot.
Right.
Let's turn down the temperature. And that was a really cool reframe for me. It's like, we don't have to let the room be what it is every time we walk in. We can actually positively influence it through what we want as well.
Right. But see, that's also one of the strengths. So, you just said, let it be. So I have to share this because my teacher shared this with me. So Paul McCartney is also a triple yin wood. Let it be. Because where there are some instances where a yin wood person really needs to stand up and say like, hey, this isn't working for me. Maybe we should do this. But you guys are fantastic at letting things be and just letting the dust settle. Because yin wood is likened, like the trigram for it is wind. So wind can be a breeze or it can be a tornado. And to just let the wind blow through and do what it's going to do and let things be and see how it sits. Like there's an incredible intuition around timing and like knowing when to let it be and when to move forward. So there's just a little fun thing.
I love that. Okay, well, I feel selfish now. So we need to, let's do a little quick brief overview. We've talked about wood clearly. Yes. Can you talk a little bit about what those other signs might look like, either just in personal expression or in relationship?
For sure. So, just in like an outward, maybe I'll mix them both together, but so we'll say fire people. So I'm a fire person. So
there we go. And so actually fire and wood are good together, right?
They are, as long as the fire person doesn't burn out the wood person. So there's always a balance, right? But yes, so wood people are like highly optimistic as well, and fire people, like everything's all about fun. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing. And fire people, outward appearance, look for red hair, freckles, dimples, big eyes, and also anybody who like dyes their hair really bright, funky colors or wears lots of bright clothes. So those are fire signs. Um, they tend to be super passionate. They tend to touch people a lot. Um, they're they're really impulsive. Um, I tend to be more yin fire, so you won't see this with me super, but like they're the little kids that everybody yells at because they don't stop moving and they're too loud, you know. Fire people in relationship, they're really direct. They're really direct with communication. They're direct with what they want. Sex and fun is like, that's a fire person's thing. It's like, this is, yeah, it's all about sex and fun. What else? So,
Well, then let's go. We can. Oh, did you either relationships, or do you want to move on and let us know about another?
yeah, we'll look at the other ones. So, all right. So water people. Water people are like the opposite. They're like the fire and water are like two sides of the same coin. So there's a lot of similarities and then a lot of really extreme differences. Water people also love sex, but in a very like sensual way. They're super sensual. They're quiet. They're like, water people are like the ultimate dark, tall, dark, and handsome, mysterious guy in the corner.
That's why I like them. That's what it is.
It's well, they're really magnetic. They're really magnetic. There's just something about them. There is a pull to be drawn to a water person. And they're usually the people like in the corner of the room. They do not like to be the center of attention. They really enjoy one-on-one conversations, if at all. You know, they're usually like trying to get out of conversations and out of social situations. Um, they are they're the ones I was talking about a little bit before. They need freedom. They tend to have really unusual jobs. Um, or so they can be like artists and creatives and like they're the ultimate like crystal ball reading oracle, or they can be like accountants and incredible with finance. So it's
so really fascinating.
Yeah.
So interesting. It's kind of like that container. It depends how contained the water is or how kind of effusive.
Well, yes. Well, water rules money, so they do really well with
even
finance.
More reason to date one.
Exactly. They're also really into like survivalist type stuff. Like they're the people that go on Naked and Afraid. Those are the water people.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. They're doing the Wim Hof method.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. Exactly. I met a few of those recently.
They're really interesting people. I love water people. So we'll talk about earth people real quick. There's 3 different types of earth, so it's hard to sum them up.
And that's crazy in and of itself, isn't it? That's so interesting to me.
Well, it's like, so we have, I think of the best way for me to describe 9-star key is like the Brady Bunch. You know, it's like we've got mom, dad, the 6 kids, and then Alice, right? So Alice is, well, she's like the center. Like, do you remember?
That's true.
And I'm sorry if this is like a dated reference for anybody, but Alice was just Google it, it'll make sense. But Alice was the center. And so I think of Earth as like Alice. So we've got Earth, which is like the planet Earth. And Ipsissimus Dave Lanyon is an Earth person. I know we have like Lady Gaga and Will Smith, like really big. Sir Richard Branson is an Earth person. They're incredible. They can get all kinds
of. They hold things together. They're like, yeah,
for sure.
Is that the mountain? Is a mountain a good?
That is young Earth. So that's a different expression. So the themes with Earth people are people, food, and connection. Those are the overall themes. And like Earth people, they're if they're not feeding you, they're thinking about what to feed you. That's just kind of how they are. And then we've got the young Earth, which is the mountain. Young Earth, Earth is all super social, but young Earth is like, they're just as social as they are introverted. If you can think of them as like someone who needs to hibernate in the cave, that is the young Earth person. Like they'll go hang out and then they go need to like decompress and be by themselves. They're more stubborn than the other Earths, for sure.
I mean, they are a mountain, but you know, how do you move a mountain?
Yeah, you don't. And they tend to be a little more hard-headed and a little more argumentative. when it comes to certain things, and they're like social workers and activists and, you know, LGBTQ allies, and like they love fighting for the underdog, and that's a young earth thing. And then yin earth is divine mother energy. So they're definitely feeding you and like baking you cookies. But they love to nurture people. So you'll see a lot of like nurses in this profession, or healers, anybody that they really love taking care of people. Sometimes to a fault, you know, self-sacrifice is mom's biggest issue. But they will, yin earth needs to be in partnership, like to the point where they can present as codependent and really clingy, but mom wasn't meant to do things alone. So like they literally don't feel complete unless they have a partner. And this goes for men too. So even though it's feminine energy, there's men walking around as yin earth, which can be really hard for them, because it's like ultimate feminine, and it's really feminine. Men are not really, they're not really celebrated in our culture, but they can make fabulous husbands and fabulous fathers, and they like love their pets. Jordan is the yin earth man.
Jordan is a yin earth?
He is.
No way. It's so we should sidetracked. Jordan Bain, who's the founder of Modern Mystery School Boston.
Yes. But he's like an incredible nurturer. The Dalai Lama.
It's true. It's true. Wow, the Dalai Lama. That makes sense then. I see that.
They have such a huge heart, and they love to take care of people, and like they're like saints walking around on earth. They're really incredible.
And there is something softer to their how they present and how they work with people. It's not like when you were talking about metal before. You could say that metal is nurturing because it's helping to prune and cut down excess growth that's really not serving anybody. But it's not really the same. You're not being fed by it.
It's not warm and fuzzy. No. So a great segue. We'll go into metal. So metal, the yin and yang expressions of metal are the most drastic changes. Like they're the most polar opposite. So metal's like the awesome container. They're not nurturing. They provide structure. They provide order. Metal is black and white, right and wrong. They love logic. They tend to be either like scientists, like kind of Spock-like, or they're totally woo-woo, which is really funny. So metal, they provide, so yang metal in particular, the masculine version of metal, they are generally right about everything. And they think they're right, and 99% of the time they are. So like being in relationship with a yang metal person can be really difficult when it comes to arguments and everything like that. Yang metal, a metal person stands up straighter than any other person. So someone who has a lot of metal in their makeup, their posture is going to be like on point. Like that's just,
I'm thinking like military. Are they drawn to the military or?
Not necessarily. That's more yang wood. That's more that
okay.
like warrior energy. This is more, if you think of like really like high powered executives, someone in charge, leadership, authority, a lot of like surgeons and doctors, they would do great as an attorney as well, because they're always right, and they kind of like to argue. They're
a king.
They're a king. Yes. And this is the one that women have the hardest time with, because it's like ultimate masculine energy. And women with this energy, they usually need to like soften a bit, because we know, just like how feminine men are not celebrated, like strong women are also not celebrated, you know.
No.
It's bitchy or cold, and that's really not the case. It's just how they are. They can't help.
Right, it's their natural expression.
Yes, and they're authoritative, and you know, that's not, women usually don't do that. I just worked with someone the other day and was able to give her some tips on like, even though you think everybody's opinions are like, you know, not great, don't let them think that.
Yes,
usually right.
That's maybe a yin wood strength.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you know, I think a lot of things, but you don't always know them.
Right. It's so funny. So that's our yang metals. That's like the emperor, you know, they're very different, and I don't know, they're actually one of my favorites. I love yang metal people. My brother is a yang metal person.
There we go. It's that power. It's just a lot of strength and power.
Totally. And like, my brother's not a tall guy, but like he has a presence, like he walks into a room and people notice. And then yin metal. So yin metal is the princess. It's also royalty, but a very different version of royalty. So there's, they're charming and they're gracious, and they really enjoy working with people one-on-one, and their strong suit is meeting someone exactly where they're at. So they can be kind of chameleon-like in their engagement with people. And if you watch them from like across the room, they will act like differently with different people, but it's exactly who that person needs. So they're able to create rapport with people really well. They can be really witty and funny. Adam Sandler is a triple yin metal.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Because they can read the crowd. Like, they are the expert at reading the room. So they know exactly what to say, and they're really quite funny. What else about yin metal?
I've also heard like the yang metal is like a sword.
Yes.
Or sometimes they feel like, shears, that pruning that we were talking about.
Yes.
But the yin metal I've heard is like jewelry.
It's jewelry, and my teachers described it as like, they're almost like a soda can.
Okay.
So like, they're like aluminum. So yes, they can contain things, but under pressure, they kind of explode. And like, if you break open like a soda can, it will slice your hands open. And so
that's true.
Yin metal people tend to be the most cutting with their words. They tend to be really like, they will lash out in conversation or in an argument. And they can't take what they dish out, which is really funny. But they have no issues with just like, they're the ones that will lash out and say terrible, horrible things. Not always, but
right, under pressure, or if they feel attacked or something. And then obviously, like you were saying before, it depends on how imbalanced everything else is.
Oh yeah, for sure. So that's our yin metal people. So we talked about fire metal. Did we get everybody?
I think we got everybody.
Okay, awesome. So, and how this works in relationships. So I'll tell a couple stories, because I didn't realize until afterwards what was happening. So I had one of my exes 10 years ago was yang metal, yang wood, and yang earth. And one thing that each of those three elements like to do is argue and debate. And I have none of those things. So I'm fire, yin, wood, and water. So
okay,
it's very.
You have a cycle within yourself. I'm like envious of you. Your water is feeding your wood, which is feeding your fire, which is controlling your water. I don't know. It's like, this is your imperfect harmony. What's going on?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I don't know. I enjoy it. I like my makeup. But like, I tend to have stronger yin, wood, and water presentation. Like, people think I'm extroverted, and I'm totally not. I hide out at home all the time. I'm a yin fire person. I don't the typical fire person. And my whole wardrobe is black, which is a water thing. So like, with him,
I got that going on too. I love black. I see we're matching today. So
yes, we are. I knew it. I was like, she's gonna wear black too. So with my ex, who I love dearly, he's one of my favorite people. We would have these conversations, and it would always be when I was like trying to get out of the house and I'm trying to go to a meeting, and all of a sudden he would be like, so what do you think about this? And we would get into this like 20-minute long conversation where it was him basically telling me all the reasons why what I thought was wrong. And I would be so frustrated and like, why are you doing this to me? And then I'm like, okay, I gotta go. And I'm like, totally annoyed.
It's like, not the time, man, not the time.
But he'd be like, that was such a great conversation. Thank you. I hope you have an awesome day. And it was his favorite thing to do, was debate. And I've recently, like even my most recent relationship, it was a very similar thing. And I'm like, I don't enjoy engaging in this way. So people that have a lot of yang metal, yang wood, or yang earth tendencies, they might be the type of person that will like sit you down at the table and have very direct conversations about the relationship and what's going wrong. And like, it's going to feel really good for them to do that.
That's like my total discomfort zone.
Exactly. But this happens in relationships.
Oh, absolutely. And I can see how, I mean, I could see how that would be, it is on some level very healthy to have those direct, meaningful conversations. And absolutely they do need to happen. But like for me, I'm much more, as you were saying, about play and fun. And so just having regular sit downs where it feels like you're trudging through and you're really efforting or working, like, ugh, that's the opposite of what I desire. But I could see how that's fun for people.
Well, and it's like they really value that. They really value, like, let's get everything on the table, let's talk about it. So like that is something that, like, that's not likely going to change with any of those elements. That's just kind of how they are. And like I mentioned before, young metal, they very often think they're right, and 99% of the time they are.
So it's interesting. I remember you talking a little bit about young metal. This is why maybe they're right all the time, that the metal is especially psychic.
Yes. Well, they're not super psychic in the way that a water person is. So there's a couple people that tend towards being more intuitive, if you will. And metal people, they feel everything. So metal people, they love, if you go to a metal person's house, if they're in balance, there's going to be a lot of black and white decor. There's going to be a lot of clean lines. Everything's going to be organized. They love organization. And it's not about efficiency so much. Wood does the same thing, but it's about efficiency, and things go here because this makes logical sense. Whereas a metal person, it's like, this is the right way to do it because they said so. And it's just how they are.
I need to go look up some of my housemates that I've lived with, because I'm starting to think this person must definitely have been metal. Every so often they would come home and they would need to rearrange all of the furniture in the living room. And I was like, great. Okay. I'm, yin wood. I don't care. Like, that's fine. But also kind of taken aback, like, what's happening? But for them, it was like this, the space is off. Like, everything needs to be redone. And after the fact, I could definitely say, like, yeah, something's been shifted. There's a little bit of lightness here, but for me, I'm like, this didn't need to happen. But for them, very clearly did need to happen.
Yes. No, they can feel clutter. Like metal people, a really good example of this is like all the home edit and the Marie Kondo stuff, like beautifully organized, color-coded books, color-coded closets, labels on everything. Like
for me, that's exhausting. I'll do it to the point that it needs to be done, the point that it's like helpful for life, kind of what you were saying with efficiency. But then past that, it starts to feel like a chore. It's like, this is a chore.
No, and they love it. They love that stuff. So metal feels things. They're constantly trying to manage the energy of everyone and everything around them because they can physically feel it. So yang metal is they're more like, they'll say things like, I can't stay in this space isn't working. Whereas yin metal, they'll tend more towards like not wearing tags in their clothes, really wearing soft clothes, making sure they don't have seams in their socks. They're like the princess and the pea fairy tale. They literally feel everything. So it's a little more.
And it's easy to make, I'm sitting here, I'm not really making fun of them, but it can be easy to sort of say, oh, they're too delicate. But if you were really feeling everything to that extent, which is on the one hand an enormous gift, then of course that's how you would behave.
Right. And metal people, they're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. And because of that precision, like the yin metal people, they make incredible surgeons, incredible chiropractors, like acupuncturists. They also tend to do hairstyling and coloring.
I could see that. Yeah.
Because the precision, everything is about precision. And when you're that good, you can be incredible at your craft. And because they're hyper intuitive, because they feel the energy of everything around them, they bring that into whatever they do. So like every single element is fascinating in their own respects. And when you can't see why they're doing what they're doing, it just seems like, okay,
it seems a little bit strange. Or like, do you need to redecorate for the 5th time this month? I guess so. But yeah, I mean, what you were saying there too. So aesthetically, there was something, I'm thinking back to this roommate, there was absolutely something that they were picking up on, but it's like, it felt a little bit more severe maybe than how I would design things. Like I like things a little bit cozier, but
Right.
what you were saying about clutter, it makes a lot of sense. If energetically they were really sensitive to that clutter, of course they would want kind of what would feel a little bit more severe to me.
Yeah, like they're the ultimate minimalists. There, there's clean lines, open space, the total opposite of what an earth person's house would look like. They are, they like clean lines. They like openness. Everything is about them feeling safe in their space. And the less stuff there's the less stuff they have to control, the more they feel safe.
There is a heaviness absolutely to clutter, as you begin to maybe become more sensitive, do more healing work. I've become much more sensitive to how clutter is kind of stagnation of energy.
Yes.
And how as we declutter, we're allowing now energy to flow, we're creating space for new opportunities. So it is powerful.
Well, clutter, it's just unmade decisions. Clutter is a pile of an unmade decision.
Oh my gosh. Are you reading my mind right now?
It's literally, it's like you haven't decided what to do with that thing. So it's sitting there and it's a drain on your energy. And metal people know that more than anybody else. So they tackle it. And what's interesting about metal people is they're either, opposite ends of the spectrum, right? They're either really, really good at it, sometimes to the point of like literal OCD, not even just saying that to be funny, but they can have OCD tendencies, or they can be hoarders, because if they can't do it perfectly, they can't do it at all. So it's like this crippling sense of trying to get things done right and being perfect.
But that's so fascinating. I can see already how helpful this would be in relationships, obviously with people you're dating, but honestly, like I was talking about with my housemate, just to understand where my housemate is coming from differently, so that we can be more compatible and live in greater harmony with one another, with kind of less judgment or just less options for sort of that tension or friction that normally arises whenever you live with somebody else.
Exactly. Like just having compassion for who they are and where they're coming from, and being able to, either just not get upset when they decide to rearrange the living room or the dishwasher or whatever, because they'll do that too. But so one of the things that's really interesting, like yang metal, they don't like confrontation, but not as much as yin metal doesn't. So yin metal will go out of their way to avoid any type of confrontation. Yin metal is like, they're all about beauty and aesthetic, and like they're the ones that will be like the hairstylist and the gallery owners and like connoisseurs of all sorts. And they're like the perfect host, or they're the hostess on the Titanic. So like when things are, this is from my teacher's teacher and I love it. It's so great. So like you're on the ship, everybody knows the ship is sinking, and the yin-metal person's going, no, play another song. This is fine. Sit down. Like they want to make everybody else feel okay so that they can feel okay. Like, and it's not, they can easily go into denial. They might lie a little bit in relationships, or a lot, because they don't want to create any conflict. So white lies here and there, or just lying outright about things, can happen with a yin metal person because it's so uncomfortable for them. Like the conversations that I had with my ex that I was talking about, a yin metal person that would not be okay. I mean, I could stand toe to toe with him being like, why are we doing this? It's a very fire thing. Like, why are we doing this? I'm not interested in this. But they would like, they would leave the house, or they would break off that relationship for that reason, because you can't handle that stuff. What else about people? So talking about clutter and environment and things like that. So earth people. So the common thread with all earth people is food. And in previous relationships I've had with earthmen, they're one of their love languages is like food. They will feed you even if you're not hungry. And I was like, but look what I made for you. And I'm like, I didn't really want that, but thanks. It's an interesting thing. So regular earth, like the Lady Gaga, Richard Branson, Ipsissimus earth, they are very forthright and opinionated and will tell you what they want and what they need. Whereas the other two earths might not do that as well. So you can expect more kind of the sit down, kitchen table talks with them too, to an extent. Whereas yin earth kind of goes along to get along. They can feel unappreciated and unacknowledged really quickly. If you think of like the soccer mom with 5 kids that's like completely stressed out, hasn't had a normal meal in 3 days, and like takes care
She's
of
just eating the crackers from her child's uneaten lunch packs. And
basically, yeah. They're prone to that self-sacrifice. I got to make everything better for everyone else. But then because they don't ask for help, they'll victimize themselves for it. And like, I'm the only one that does anything. They can get stuck in these patterns. Whereas like a young earth person, so the yin earth person, they'll like whine and cry about it. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I have a lot of that earth in me. But the young earth person, like, they're the type of people that if they do something for you and it's not acknowledged, they'll be like, you're welcome. It's like
they have that confrontation to some extent.
Yeah, much more in your face about like, I've done this for you and I don't understand why you don't appreciate it. But there's always this. So another thing I'm realizing. So just like yang metal thinks that they're right all the time, earth is also thinks that they're right all the time, and usually is. So if you have a yang metal person and an earth person in relationship, that constant battle for being right is going to be, watch out for that.
Like there'll probably have to be some other harmonizing elements to allow them to get along.
Right. Well, and if they're both right and agreeing on the same thing, that's a fantastic relationship. But if they need to be right for their own reasons, which is usually like being right for their own reason is usually more of an earth thing. But then yang metal is like, well, this is real life and kind of unbiased. So that's just an interesting thing to watch out for.
Yeah, if they're too attached, let's say.
Yeah.
To their need to be right.
Exactly. So those would be an interesting pair in relationship. You don't see a lot of that. And then
I think water is one that we haven't really touched on. Maybe we can do a quick touch on water and then fire, and we're kind of at time. So
oh my goodness. Okay.
Yes.
So fire, like I mentioned before, they're just like really direct, clear communication. Fire people, they don't tend to hide a whole lot. Like their emotions walk across their face. So like if they're unhappy or upset, fire people tend to be more easy to read when it comes to that sort of thing. And they also tend to be kind of an open book. Fire people struggle with boundaries. They're usually all the way open all the time.
So, and then they might not understand that other people aren't that way.
Exactly. So I'm glad we're talking about these two back to back, because it's a really interesting thing that happens with water people. So water people, they, like I said before, they're like tall, dark, mysterious. But women can be that really mysterious quality too. And one of the things that water people do is, because they keep everything under the surface, everything is really deep, and they literally, whereas the fire person, things walk across their face, water people feel emotions so deeply, but they're like really stoic and kind of stone cold, and you don't know what's happening. They're like everything's fine. No, everything's fine. And everything is not fine. But so what water people do, which makes it really hard in relationships, is because everything is hidden, they create these stories about what's happening with other people, because they don't know how to be forthright with their emotions, with what they're feeling. And this isn't all water people, but for the most part, they tend to be.
I mean, it makes sense when you're talking about how creative they are. I think a lot of times about, creativity is just finding that way to express something that's really deep. And, that energy that's moving through us needs to find its form. So whether that's music or art or however it is, but it makes a lot of sense that where that's a strength, it can also be a hindrance or a weakness, right? That they might not actually be able to put into words or feel totally at peace or comfortable putting into words the depths of how they feel.
Well, and yes, because they really struggle with verbal communication, because they're trying to find the right word to sum up how they feel. So they would rather say nothing than say the wrong thing, because it just, so they're much better written communicators. You know, you might get like a whole bunch of text messages from them, but not like in person. They're not going to tell you what's going on. So in a relationship, because water people are so used to like hiding all the things, they might think that you are also not being forthright. So it can be, it's just a really interesting dance with a water person to help
They're
them.
like almost trying to guess what's happening underneath your surface, even if it's nothing.
That's right. That's right.
Interesting.
I mean, yeah, it's just it's kind of how their brain is wired. So I mean, if you're a water person watching this, not everyone else is thinking the way that you do. If you take nothing else away from this, it's like other people really do say what they mean.
And also, maybe just not as much is happening for us emotionally or otherwise, under the surface. It's like, what you see is what you get, a little bit more.
Well, and some people tend to like yin wood can be really, they internalize a lot of stuff. Anything yin internalizes. And yin metal, they're not fine, but they're not going to tell you they're not okay because they like denial and they like to hide from conflict. But but wood people and fire people and earth people, like they'll tell you. They will tell you what's going on. So it's just helpful to know. Some people, we all have our strategies for how we operate and move through the world. And when you can understand that other people are actually like saying what they mean, or it makes life so much easier.
Yeah, I could see how that could create huge tension in a relationship. I know even for myself, I don't have tons of water, but I've created stories in my mind about what's happening for another person, or assumptions. Oh, this must be what's going on. And sometimes maybe it was true, but maybe sometimes it was total fantasy and fiction. And it just got in the way of me actually being able to connect with that person in a real way. So,
right.
Absolutely. It has been amazing having you on. This time has flown by. Yeah. I feel like there's still so much to explore. Hopefully none of the signs feel left out. Sorry that I hoarded the yin wood. You know what? I did it. I'm not going to apologize. I did it. You know what? But maybe there's opportunity for people who are listening. They can obviously go deeper. You have a lot of video content about this for people, not necessarily about the relationships specifically, but just about how those signs express themselves. And then I know you actually do relationship readings for people based on the 9-star key.
I do. So everything is up on my website. It's just jacquelynnemaloney.com/blueprint. But
it's below the video, so you got it.
But I do in-depth personal sessions. I can help you. And this is more for like how to support your relationship and build deep connection. This isn't like pull tarot cards and help me figure out my partner. No.
Is he the one? It's like, how do we better show up?
Exactly.
In the relationship. Gotcha.
Yeah. Like, what are they thinking? What do they need? Why do they do these things? And like, just trying to put yourself in another person's shoes and deepen that relationship. And that goes for kids too. Like if you've got kids and you're trying to figure out how to work with your kids, like I can do that too. And then, yeah, I've got all my forecasts and stuff up on, I have my channels on YouTube and Instagram and everything. Just use my name and you'll find me everywhere.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Jack, so much. So helpful. I kind of want to go do that. I don't have anybody to do it for, but in the future, maybe I will. Maybe I'll build my ideal person. They were born on this date. I'll work backwards.
This is so fun. Thank you so much.
Yes. All right. Bye, everybody. Take care.